What's it like with that much power? Is it great or is it just...
Yes, I guess. I mean, I just see it as a huge responsibility. And the one thing that Martin Wood and Damien Kindler and I did when we set out to produce Sanctuary and make it into a TV series, television traditionally has a hierarchy, what they call above the line and below the line. It's generally like, you know, the producers and the actors and the keys of each department. Then there's this very definitive line, and then it's the rest of the crew, or some of the, you know, cast members. And I've always resented that, not resented, but I've always found that hard to, you know, because people have this exalted sense of power just because they have a title. So Martin, Damien, and I very clearly said, let's get rid of the us and them, and let's just create we. So everyone, whether you're sweeping the stage at the end of the night, or putting away the grip stands, or making the food, or, you know, executive producing the show, you're all on a level playing field. And for the most part, I would say we've been highly successful with that, because what's happened is our show does not have a big budget as most sci-fi shows, and our crew comes back every year because they know that they're respected and appreciated. And I'm not afraid to go up to somebody and say, I don't understand what you're doing. Can you explain it to me? Not because I need them to justify what they're doing, but because I need to I don't know. I'm not afraid to show that I'm ignorant about certain aspects of. And I think that people in a position of power often don't do that. They're like, oh yeah, you just do that, yeah. Whereas I'm like, what is that thing that you're doing? Oh, that's cool.
One more question. I don't want to spoil it for everyone else, but that surprise last night, will it be carrying on? Is it a one-off?
One-off. Yeah, it won't be carrying on. And I think it was written to be a one-off. It was written to be just that surprise moment. And did you like it? Good man. Hi. Yeah. Sorry, but jump. Hello.
We just started watching SG1 again with our two young boys who really are getting into it.
How cool.
The question I have is what's it like to work with Richard Dean Anderson, considering we know him as MacGyver?
Right.
So, a long time ago. So we couldn't watch SG1 when it first came out because we pictured him as MacGyver.
Right. Well, to be honest, I had never seen an episode of MacGyver when I got the gig. I know, right? So in as much as I knew who Richard Dean Anderson was and I knew who MacGyver was, I never actually watched the show. So when I came for my final audition, I was brought up onto a stage not dissimilar to this, but the entire audience was in black. And I just started goofing around with Richard because I was nervous. It was my final screen test for the show. But also he just kind of had this, he has this kind of snarky, fun energy about him, and I picked up on it and went, okay, I think he'll be fun to play with. So we joked around right from the start, and in fact, I think that's what got me the part, ultimately, was Brad Wright and Jonathan Glasner came out and said, you know that thing you're doing with Rick in between setups? Keep doing that, because it's fun to watch you guys. And then they did this thing in the audition where they made us stand beside each other to see what we looked like. You know, and so Richard put his arm around me, and I was like, and I don't know what possessed me, but into this blackness where there's all this Showtime executives, all the MGM executives, and I'm like, so is this like the swimsuit part of the competition? And Rick gave me a little squeeze, and he went, great job, sweetheart, see you later. And off I went. And then I had to wait to find out whether I got the part. But so then when I walked onto set the first day, it was like, he's the executive producer, he's #1 on the call sheet, he's a TV star. Any number of things could go wrong with this scenario, but he was utterly charming. And he took Michael and Christopher and I under his wing, too. None of us had ever done a big series before, and he and I used to go for long walks and just talk about stuff. And, you know, I remember walking with him down Robson, one of the main streets in Vancouver, and I was like, so, Richard, MacGyver. MacGyver. What does that mean? No sooner had I said that than this van load of boys pulls out. leaning out the window going, and Greg's like, well, you get that. He's lovely. He's got he's brilliant. He's a genius. He's a very, very intelligent man. He's very gracious. He's got a wicked sense of humor, very dry, and he's made me cry more than once. Like just like, oh, that was me. But no, he's lovely. He's lovely. We laughed. I mean, and I say this of Sanctuary too. We laughed every single day on the set of Stargate over 10 years, every single day. So. I know. He's the one who sets, that's the benchmark by which we all judge our action, right? He's the one who sets the tone. I like him just a little bit. If you can tell. Hello. Hi. Hi, Linda Teddy. How does it feel to be the most badass science fiction chick? Am I? Oh, yes. That's sexy. Chick working in a team with 3 other guys traveling room to room. Yeah. Wow. Well, first of all, thank you. The initial thing with SG-1 was convincing the writers that they had to stop red flagging the fact that I was a woman. That, you know, that whole my internal organs are on the inside. Right? Now, that line was in the pilot, and our contract specifically stated that we could be fired after the pilot. Like, we'd either, you got the pilot, and then you carry on, or they had the option of jettisoning you after the pilot. So, of course, we're all on our absolute best behavior during the pilot, because nobody wants to get fired. And so I get to this line, and I'm like, really? Really? On the day, and I looked at Richard and I was like, really? And he said, just go to bed. Just go to bed. You can make it work. You can make it work. I'm just as good as you are. Then after that, once I found out that they weren't going to fire me and that I was now officially a character on the show, Michael, Chris, and I were like, okay, now, what bugs us about it? So I went up to the writers and I said, please, can you write as if you're writing for a man, where you don't put any of the female references that you keep putting in. And I, simply by the fact that I'm a woman, will hopefully bring an inherent femininity to it. But don't just write her as a brilliant human being. And yes, the soldier, like I'm physically I can do this, and intellectually I can do it. So don't write the girly moments. I mean, they wrote some in for fun. But for the most part, they dropped off of that. So I didn't feel like I had to keep pushing the female agenda. I was hoping that it would just become an organic part of the team and that eventually she would just be accepted for who she was as a human being, which happened. But I grew up being the only girl on a team of 3 boys, and some of you may have heard this before. I grew up with 3 brothers. So here's a bunch of weird things. When I was born, my father wanted me to be called Samantha. And my mom wanted Amanda. And so for my entire life, my father has called me Sam. Right? It gets better. I work on a show with Richard, Christopher, and Michael. My brothers' names are Richard, Christopher, and Stephen, and I have a stepbrother named Michael. So, I just think the universe said, this is for you. You have to get this part. So I kind of know how to handle the boys. There were times when I was like, oh, my brothers never did that. But for the most part, they're lovely people. So we found a really nice simpatico. But I think that there was some weird, universal, tinky, woo-woo, mojo, wah-wah that, like, Amanda Tapping, Sam, you're going to get the part, but you're going to work with these guys. None of my brothers had a symbiote that... No, they didn't.